Hello, welcome to the Pit Stop Podcast. I'm your host, Braydon Dowler-Coltman. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jordan Dowler-Coltman. We are here to talk about the race last weekend in Spain, right?
Barcelona.
That's correct. And we're going to be teeing up the race this upcoming weekend. Very exciting race, Monaco, the outdoor extravaganza through the streets. That's what's so exciting about Monte Carlo. I'm really excited to start Monte Carlo. Am I right? Oh, it's Monaco. Monte
Carlo is the city. Yeah, the little fishing town of Monte Carlo.
Apparently, it's a very, very nice
cities
place
in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least they make it look very nice. All right, here we go. All right, there was a big race last weekend. Spain, Barcelona, the Grand Prix.
2 weeks ago.
Well, so here's the thing, Jordan. It was 2 weeks ago, and I can hardly remember it. What were your thoughts?
Well, it wasn't a particularly exciting race in most senses. We didn't have a lot of action. We didn't have a lot of yellow flags or anything like that. So we got to see again another head-to-head Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen race where, again, Lewis got the better of Max with a little bit of just superior strategy. I think what we're really starting to see is that regardless of whether or not the Red Bull car is tuned to be just a little bit faster and it's designed this year than the Mercedes, when you put them out on a racetrack, sometimes flat out speed just isn't enough. Mercedes has better full race strategy. Obviously, they've won 7 championships in a row. They know what they're doing. And they're definitely the experience, I would say, right now has been the difference. I think you were also starting to see Max Verstappen get a little bit frustrated, get a little bit annoyed that he hasn't quite been able to dominate the way that the car he's in would suggest he should be able to. So that's sort of the storyline so far, but it hasn't disappointed. We got the year the way we expected the year to be, head to head, Lewis being pushed by Max, and it was another one of those races.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see that. Who came in third?
Bottas.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was gonna say it's nice to see McLaren kind of keeping pace.
I actually thought they had a bit of a weaker race last week, but you're right. They have been better this season.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah, sorry. They did struggle a little bit in compared to how they had qualified, but yeah, that car is still getting a little bit better with that new Mercedes engine, as we've talked about many times, but still definitely room for them to improve. In fact, Ricciardo outraced Norris last week, but Norris signing a new contract this week, so he's set up for next year with McLaren again. So obviously, nice. He is the future, and they'll continue to push. The big sort of impressive finish I thought last week, or pardon me, 2 weeks ago, last race I should say, in Barcelona was Charles Leclerc getting his first real sort of sniff at the podium. He was able to finish in 4th. So we got some good points for the Ferrari team that's definitely having a bounce back year after a real struggling trip out last year and even the year before that, to be honest. But Ferrari looking to be almost rounding back into form. Perez took a little step back. He finished 5th, but did have a good race. And then for me, just based on the eye test of Sunday race, I thought one of the most impressive drivers out there was Ocon in the Alpine. He finished 9th, but he also qualified, I believe, up in the top 10 as well the day before on Saturday. So he had his best qualifying of the season. He qualified 5th. So he started 5th on the grid. So he did fall a little bit to 9th, which I'm sure to his mind would have been a little bit of a letdown. But considering his teammate Alonso didn't finish in the top 10, in fact, he was all the way back at 17. It's great to see Ocon pushing that French car the way he's been pushing it. And I would say he's definitely one to keep an eye on in the middle of the pack, someone who could be competing for some points every weekend, and that's exciting. So yeah, like I said, he finished in 9th, so that was a good finish for him.
I want to talk about Haas for a second. Are they gonna do anything this year? Is this a write-off year with these 2 new drivers? Like, what are your expectations of Haas from what you've seen so far? And like, is is our fun buddy, who's the director on that
Gunther.
team?
Gunther.
Is his job on the line this year?
You'd think maybe. I mean, the truth is, they are in a by far and away the worst car. So it's,
Yeah,
usually the last couple of years it's been Williams, and Haas has been a little bit better. Only a few years ago they were competing for the middle of the table. They were in the fifth
yeah,
or sixth best car.
yeah.
They're now way, 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 way down there. So that's definitely, I mean, they're not coming out here expecting to win races. They'll be desperate to try to get points, but they have two young drivers, one with a lot of experience and one with not a lot of experience. So a lot of different things are happening week in and week out as those drivers continue to develop. I will say, qualifying last week, um, Mick Schumacher actually out qualified not only his own teammate, but one of the Williams for the first time this season. So they didn't finish back of the pack to start the race. He finished in 18th, but there was still a Williams behind him. Latifi qualified lower than him by a couple hundredths of a second. So at least there's some improvement if you can find some silver lining in that. But I would say Mick Schumacher has the highest sort of potential of any of the rookies this year. I mean, Sonoda, I think, has surprised a lot of people, but he's obviously in a better car.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
Mick Schumacher, having one F2, and he's a really, really great driver. And yes, obviously, his name is a big part of it. People have paid attention to him because of that, but he's also earned his own stripes in his own way. He drives really, really
He's learned
fast.
from
He's
the
very
best.
aggressive. Yeah. And of course, yeah, the pedigree is there. So I would say it's his job this year to just get some experience, gets as many laps in. He's going to be push that car as far as he can. So that's what I look for from Haas. I'd like to see him start to compete for, 15th and 16th, and
Well,
then
for
move up
sure.
to
I mean,
14th and 13th. And eventually maybe you can fight for points, but probably not this season. No, not in that
yeah,
Haas
if,
car.
if I'm Gene Haas, like, what's the value? And I've never really quite understood this. Like, obviously, you want to have competition in the sport, and yes, there's already going to be a tier. Um, uh, I don't know, like, what would you call it? Just the format, the way that it goes. There are top tier
Teams, yeah.
cars, and then there's your middle of the pack, and then there's your cars that are following up, or the lapped teams.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's the value of having a car
lapped
that's constantly like
both Haas.
Haas is not, they're not going to beat Mercedes. They're not
No,
going to
no,
beat
and that's not what they're
Red
trying to
Bull.
do. They're definitely not.
What are they
this
trying
right-
to do? This
Well,
is the
they're
thing
trying
in
to
F1 I'm
compete
not-
for points. They're trying to compete for points. Remember, the money in the sport is made through not just results, but through sponsorship. So really, they're out
Sponsors.
there with a bunch of sponsors slapped to the
Yeah.
side of the car, and their job is to perform as best they possibly can for that. Yes, of course,
Right.
they have a long-term plan of building a team that can find success and eventually compete. But the truth is, the sport, like you said, has top teams, middle teams, and bottom teams, and they're a bottom team. They're a perennial bottom team. They have in the past, a couple years ago, sort of found some mediocre success. Where the real competition in the current table exists, is for that third through fifth spot, right? That's where the teams that have good cars, that aren't going to be winning, the drivers of the constructors championship, they're fighting for
Right.
those positions, because every step up that ladder increases the money your team's making, millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
So
But in
that's what
terms
they're
of the
fighting for.
competition for the sport, just for a second, like the structure of the sport, I know we're kind of pushing this on this topic, but look at basketball and hockey and all of those team sports where the competition is spread throughout. In the off season, the bottom teams draft a player. Hopefully they're able to, build their way up the next year. You can't see that in this sport. So is there ever going to be a time, like there's the one concept, well, even next year, where there's going to be a cap or budget restrictions or certain echelon where every team has to participate? Will we actually see that change the competition in the sport? And do you think that there's a future where we see Haas actually competing at the top?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's how the sport is designed. So there's never going to be parity. Yes, they're trying to increase the competitive level, because I think after almost a decade of Mercedes being at the top, other interests surrounding the sport are finding that they're struggling with that part of it. You know, you want to be able to compete for the championship if you're a top 5 team. But if you're a bottom 5 team, remember there's 10 teams in the sport. You can't all be competing for number 1. It's just not going to, it's too complicated a sport, right? So you have teams that are designed to be the middle team. That's what their goal is. Their target is to just be in the middle there, to compete for what those things are. Haas, I think, has set themselves up in a smart way this year to have stripped their experienced drivers away. They've put in some rookies. They're going to treat their program right now as a development program. You know, yes, they're still competing in F1, so they have to be able to meet some level of standard, but their goal is to compete with the Alfa Romeos and right now the Aston Martins and the other sort of bottom 5 teams, you know. But look at a team like AlphaTauri, who like 4 or 5 years ago would have been considered out of that top 5 team. Well, they're fighting now in the last 2 seasons. Not only do we see them, I mean, they won a race last year, but they're fighting for some podiums and they're competing to be a top 5 team, right? Which means that one or both their drivers is getting points every race. They're pushing the car each trip out to get it better and more competitive. And then slowly they can fight for position 4, position 3, and slowly move up that table. The same way, you know, McLaren has gotten better over the last couple of years to now where they're a competitive team year in and year out. They've had, and we've seen Ferrari go through a rebuild and they're in their same place now where they're coming back up to compete at the top. So that's kind of how the sport works. It's a little weird, I know, and you can't really compare it to any other thing, but motorsports is sort of its own animal.
Its own breed. All right. That was Spain. That was some thoughts. That was topic 1. This episode of the Pit Stop Podcast is brought to you by Roma Pizza and Donair. We all know that the best thing about Edmonton is the many Donair options. And I know if you're like me, it can be overwhelming and stressful trying to hunt down the best. Well, my friends, we have found it and it's time you did too. Roma Pizza and Donair in Westbrook, Aspen Gardens is Edmonton's best kept secret. There's nothing quite like piping hot meat getting shaved and served with a generous ratio of sweet sauce. And look, I know someone out there is saying, yeah, no, that's not really my thing. Well, hold your horses, because there is more. Roma Pizza and Donair not only serves Edmonton's best donair, but they also offer Roma pizzas, dinner platters, chicken wings, chicken fingers, chicken nuggets, chicken talwook, burgers, salads, subs, baklava, coconut cake, and with summer right around the snow-covered corner, they also have summer specials, deep-fried pickles and deep-fried Oreos. But hey, don't take my word for it. Sometimes tasting is believing. To order, call them at 780-944-9696. That's 780-944-9696. They're open every day except Sunday from 11 until 11 and open till midnight Friday and Saturday. You can also follow them on Instagram at Roma Pizza Donair. All right, topic 2. Jordan just talked about Ferrari there. It's going to be a big race for Ferrari this weekend. We are in Monaco at the Circuit de Monaco.
Yeah, in the little fishing town of Monte Carlo, one of the wealthiest cities in the world, the casino capital of Europe. And it is one of the most beautiful and most fascinating races every year. We didn't have it last year, obviously, with COVID, but we're going to have it this year with 40% capacity. So there will be fans in the stands and on their yachts and on the boats that surround the harbor. It's one of the most scenic races, and in most years, and we'll see how it plays out this year, it's traditionally, sprinkled with celebrities and glitz and glamour, and it's sort of this very highfalutin signature race of F1. It is a street course, like Braydon mentioned off the top, tight corners. There really is no straightaway in this race. I think the top speed that any car gets to is about 270. That's kilometers. So it's fast, but it's not like on some of those flat out courses like what we saw in Spain, where you have like the start finish areas on like a 400 or 500 yard straightaway. Hard to pass here. Qualifying on Saturday is going to be crucial, and it's one of the most exciting parts of the weekend. So if you're not used to watching qualifying, I would recommend it this weekend, because there will be incidents. People will hit walls trying to make those tight corners, and damage will affect how they qualify. So look for a couple teams to perform under their usual, but also push their machines and more specifically their drivers to limit. It's the hardest course, probably one of the hardest courses in the world for the drivers to drive, just because there's really no time when
There's
you're
no
not
room for
turning the
error.
car, and the car is constantly moving.
Yeah.
So it's a very fun course. I watched some highlights from practice earlier on Thursday, and yeah, it was exciting to see how competitive just even the practice runs were. Alonso lost his front wing on a corner. Both Alonso on his second practice, and I believe it was also Kimi Räikkönen. Both of them had lockups at turn one where there's a little runoff area, and both of them left the track, trying to do as little damage to the car as they can, obviously, but lots of very narrow streets. So it's a lot of fun. There's a beautiful tunnel there. They come in from the bright sunlight into a dark tunnel and then back out the other side. We've seen some big crashes here, but we've also seen some unbelievable finishes. Ricciardo winning here a couple years ago when he was still with Red Bull. So look for some of the more technically skilled drivers to succeed.
And who do you think those technically skilled drivers are?
Well, I mentioned Ricciardo, and the other thing to watch with Ricciardo that's going to be really fun is that McLaren has gotten special permission from the FIA and from F1 to run a Golf livery. So the Golf is a very famous race
sick.
car. If you haven't seen the Golf, Google it. Anyone who knows the car will know what the livery should already look like. It's blue and
This is the
papaya
white one?
orange.
It's
papaya
sort of that
orange. Blue and
orange.
papaya. But
Man, there's nothing better than
down the
papaya
side.
orange.
But it's beautiful, and it's really fun to kind of get a new livery in there. We saw it last year. Ferrari, I believe, ran a darker red for one of their special races. So maybe the FIA and F1, who have all these rules about liveries, are slowly starting to relax them a little bit, which would be a lot of fun. But yeah, so hopefully Lando Norris and Ricciardo in that special Golf livery can make it a special weekend for McLaren. They'll be very excited if that can happen. Obviously, you got to watch the top two guys. I think we're starting to see the tensions rise a little bit with Hamilton and with Verstappen. Both of them were a little bit I don't know. There was some posturing, let's say, during their pre-race weekend press conference. Hamilton was asked if he felt like Max was pushing him, and he sort of shot back, "No, I'm pushing myself." And Verstappen, I think, is looking to get a little bit more respect than he feels he's getting. And the other guys, Valtteri Bottas is the only guy right now who's in a position to catch either one of them. And if he wants to make this a 3-dog race, then he needs to be able to start putting some first places on his resume this season, and not just those third and runner up points. So those would be the guys I think have the best things to sort of start with. You mentioned Ferrari. This is Charles Leclerc's home race, so he'll be excited to be out there, and definitely has again something to prove. And other than that, yeah, it's really anybody's guess who's going to have a good weekend.
The reason I did mention Ferrari was that I just looked into this because I remember it coming up in that Netflix series, but Ferrari lost a driver in Lorenzo Bandini back in 1967 in this race in Monaco, and you touched on at the beginning. This is a hard track, which makes it exciting, and that's what I'm excited for. Not the danger that comes with the tight turns, but the fact that these drivers really do have to race. It's now, it's beyond just putting the pedal to the metal. How fast you can go. It's about the technique on cornering, and it'll be really interesting to see how many pit stops we see. If it's not usually raining, I think, in Monaco, and
the weather looks pretty good this weekend, so it should be okay.
So that's good. Weather won't be a factor there. But
I will say the other, when we talked about Leclerc, Carlos Sainz also had a great weekend of qualifying, or pardon me, of practice so far. The Thursday practice, he finished both sessions in second overall when it came to full lap time. So he's pushing that car really well too, and I think he could definitely have a good weekend. A little bit of history on the line. We've seen this race in and race out, especially through last year with Lewis. Obviously, he's chasing the record of most drivers' championships this year. If he can win that, he'll edge Michael Schumacher to be the greatest driver of all time by championships. However, in this race specifically in Monaco, two drivers, one of them being Lewis, the other one actually being being Vettel, both have a chance to get their 8th podium at Monaco. So even if it's second or third, if they get on the podium, either one of them, 8 will be the total number, and that will pass Ayrton Senna, who holds the record right now for F1 for most Monaco victories. The great Ayrton Senna, who also died in a tragic accident, not in Monaco, but a very famous race driver, and one of those guys who's sort of on that Mount Rushmore of drivers. He has 8 podiums to his name, both Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel sitting at 7. So if either one of them can hit the podium, they will surpass Senna.
Well, and this is why I feel so bad for Bottas. It's like this guy has the ability to compete, and I wonder how much Mercedes is also setting them aside. Saying we already know that there's strategy and technique and pushing your number one driver, in front of the B driver. I don't really know why that makes sense all the time, but it seems to be what the strategy is, and the B driver usually lets it happen. But I just don't see how Bottas, even just his confidence, can be successful when you're driving with Lewis.
Yeah, and we did see last week, we didn't mention this, but we did see an incident where Hamilton was coming up behind Bottas, and Bottas was asked over the radio to yield and give him the right of way, and he took at least a couple more turns and a couple more corners before he finally gave way to Lewis. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think Lewis had to fight to pass him. I don't think he gave him the space,
which I think is what you should be doing. Bottas is in the lead.
Totally. And for Bottas. Mercedes, both of their drivers doing well obviously gains them the most points in the constructors race, and they're obviously they're both competing for one of their drivers to win, but as a team they want to win the constructors championship too. So there is a lot of 3D chess going on strategically with both teams drivers, both teams engineers, and figuring out how they're going to race strategy wise. They obviously want both cars up there because having 2 cars also is going to push Verstappen, and they want to be able to be in a strategic position to undercut him with one or both of those cars. So it definitely helps them to have them both competing. And so far this season, Bottas has done a pretty good job of that. Obviously, he left the race a couple weeks ago after that incident with the Williams of George Russell, who hit him. But other than that, he has been able to still be a factor for Mercedes, which is what they want. But yeah, it's part of the game. It's part of the sport for sure. We did see an incident a couple years ago too here with Red Bull, with the two of them coming together. It was Ricciardo and Verstappen, and they collided, and both of them, their race was over. So you never know what'll happen in Monaco, but that's why it's one of the most exciting races. One of my favorite Monaco stories is a couple years ago, Kimi Räikkönen, who's always one of those interesting characters. And I think this weekend he was asked, is Monaco a little extra special? And he said, no, it's just like any other race. He's one of those guys who's seen a lot and been everywhere, and sort of his attitude is always c'est la vie, but he still gets up in the morning to race and loves to race. However, he was knocked out of a race a couple seasons ago here at Monaco early in the race, and instead of going back to the pit lane, he had gotten out of the car, left the track, made sure everything was safe, cleared with the medical staff, and then he walked in full gear, including his helmet, down the pier and sat on his yacht in his race jumpsuit, took his helmet off, sat on a lawn chair on his private yacht, and watched the rest of the race from the harbor, which you can only do in Monaco anyway. But a great story, great highlight. Go look that up on YouTube later if you haven't seen it. It's a very funny Kimi Räikkönen moment. But Monaco always has some exciting drama and always has some entertainment. So excited for a great race weekend here. Qualifying Saturday, race Sunday.
And Monaco's special because there's a very special dress code. Can you guess what the dress code is, Jordan?
No, what's the dress code?
So in Monaco, it means a dress, skirt, or pants for women, and a shirt or polo shirt with a jacket or blazer and trousers for men. Shorts are not recommended for men or women.
That's on the race website?
Yeah, these are just recommendations, though. Obviously, you can wear what you want. You can support the team you're cheering for, even if it's the Oilers. I don't know how many hockey jerseys we'll see in Monaco this weekend, but we might see some hockey players.
You never know.
What are your final predictions? What do you think what are your predictions here?
Every week, every
I know. How
race,
can you not?
I feel like it's the same two guys.
I know.
We talked a lot about Bottas. I mean, I could go out on a limb and say maybe he has a good race. Here's what I would suggest. I think it's very likely we see a Ferrari on the podium. I don't know if they'll get past third place, but I would be excited to see that. And I think if they can keep it out of the wall, both of those drivers have a really good chance this week with the car they have to compete. And like I said, their practices have been great. So we'll see what happens in qualifying and how well they do. But if they can put themselves in a good position on the grid, they got a good chance.
My prediction is going to be that George Russell is going to have a really good race. You talked about technical drivers. I think he is one of the best on the track. And I think he's going to have a really, really good race, and he's going to get some points for that Williams team, even if it's like 1, 2. But that's good. Okay. Well, that's our podcast this week. Thanks for tuning in. The race is this Sunday, May 23rd, 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time at the Circuit de Monaco.
Watch qualifying Saturday. Watch qualifying. It's going to be exciting at Monaco. Just set your PVR. You can watch the whole race weekend on PVR.
All right. Thanks for listening this week. We'll see you next week. That was Pit Stop. Pit Stop podcast is presented by HatTrick Sports and is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. The show is produced by Jordan and Braydon Dowler-Coltman each week, but mainly Jordan. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Yeah, no, I have seen this. It looks incredible. And their marketing,
right? Because this is their regular car, and that orange is papaya orange.
Yeah.
And so then this is the Golf, which is inspired by this car, which is the Golf.
Sick. Oh, sick. I drive a Golf. Oh, that's a Golf.
Yeah, Golf. Not golf. Golf. Like the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. You can golf in Mexico too.
All right. Thank you.